Welcome to the state of Ohio. I'm Karen Kassler. We're at the end of our series of interviews we do every 4 years, conversations with the candidates, specifically the 10 major party candidates for the 5 statewide executive offices of Secretary of State, Attorney General, Auditor, Treasurer, and this week, the first of 2 extended interviews with the candidates for governor. This week, Nan Whaley. She was a Dayton City Commissioner before being elected mayor of Dayton in 2014. She served in that office until the end of last year. Whaley briefly ran for governor 4 years ago, but dropped out and endorsed Richard Cordray, who lost to Mike DeWine by 3.7% or around 164,000 votes. When Whaley won the Democratic primary in May, she became the first woman to win a major party nomination for governor of Ohio. She and her running mate, Cheryl Stevens, are the first all-woman ticket for governor and lieutenant governor in state history. So why do you want to be governor?
Well, look, I loved being mayor. It was a great job. I was mayor for 8 years, president of the United States Conference of Mayors, so the mayors across the country chose me as their leader. We were able to get great work done, like passing ARPA funding to local communities, which you see them doing great work with today across Ohio, passing the bipartisan infrastructure bill, something we waited 8 years for to get done in my entire time as mayor. So I love that work. And mayor's a job you get to be visionary about where you want your community to go, but at the same time, you have to plow the snow and fill the potholes or they will kick your tail out of office, right? So you have to do both at the same time. And as I looked across the state, I saw local leaders, both Democrat and Republican, doing their level best to move their communities forward. But frankly, they don't have a partner at the state house or in the governor's office. And I remember talking to some of them about deciding to run. And I said, listen, we can continue to manage the hits that we can continue to get from the state house and this week governor, or we can go and work to take the state house and take the governor's seat so we have a true partner to grow our communities. Keep in mind, the only region in this entire state that's growing is the Columbus Metro. And it has a lot to do with the fact that there's just no partnership at the governor's office with local communities. And so you see that, pretty front and center when you're a mayor.
I want to get back to the economic issues that you're hinting at there, but I want to start with the idea that you've built a lot of your campaign around the issue of abortion. In the last 3 polls, though, the Marist poll, Siena College, and Emerson, abortion polled between 16 and 20%. The economy was the top issue, and threats to democracy were actually second issue. So why focus on an issue that's polling so much lower than those other 2?
Well, look, I think polling is broken. I really do. Like, we see examples over and over again around Kansas, for example, where it was too close to call and they won by 19 points, right? So I don't think you're really getting the entire electorate when you're talking about these issues. And I can tell you that the number of voter reg men to women in this state is second only to Kansas, with not much organizing in the state, just organically happening. We're seeing enormous numbers of absentee ballot requests, and we're seeing that a right was taken away. First time in my life that any group of people have lost a right in this country. And you have a governor that believes in that right being taken away as well. And frankly, it is so out of step about what Ohioans believe, because this is a common sense state. It's a pro-choice state. The majority of the state believes there should be some sort of access to abortion, like 82% of the state. So there's a big opportunity there because of what's at stake for women in this state because of Mike DeWine's position.
Have you talked or thought about broadening the issue to things like birth control, IVF, same-sex marriage, the right to privacy? I mean, same-sex marriage would be illegal if Obergefell, that decision falls.
Correct.
In Ohio, it would
Yeah,
be.
I mean, we make that point as well. I mean, I think, this is, the thing about abortion is it is an economic issue. It is a healthcare issue. It's a rights issue. So it really does fall in all of those things. We talk a lot, frankly. If you're 20 to 40 years old and a woman, and you have a choice about whether to live in Ohio or not live in Ohio, you're going to choose not to live here because you're not going to be able to get access to the health care you need. Pregnancy is tough, and your doctor's not going to be able to give you all of your options. I mean, we've seen examples in Dayton, for example. A woman that wanted to carry the pregnancy to term finds out she has cancer, has to go across state lines to terminate the pregnancy. These are everyday occurrences that OBGYNs are seeing. Secondly, I talk to medical students all across the state, and they're like, no, I don't want to practice here because I'm not going to get the training that I need going to a college in Ohio now, and I'm not going to be able to provide my patients with the care they need and deserve. That is what's at stake here when we talk about this issue. It's not just, the rights issue and the freedom issue, which is really a big deal. But it's also a workforce issue, it's a healthcare issue, and it touches everyone's lives in very unique ways. And for that to be ripped out of women's hands so quickly, we need to take some action. And the Supreme Court has said it's a state issue. Fine. Let's put it on the ballot. We know it's a pro-choice state. Codify it. Put it in the Ohio Constitution so we all have the same rights we had back on June 23rd.
I want to talk to you about that, a potential ballot issue. There's been some talk about some sort of a constitutional amendment that would go before voters. You, if you were elected, would be a pro-choice governor in an anti-abortion state. And
well,
at
I
least
think it's a pro-choice state. It's
in terms of the legislature.
Yes, we have an illegitimate state legislature that doesn't follow the will of the people, nor are these lines that are drawn that have been viewed unconstitutional by the Supreme Court. I mean, really what you're seeing is a crisis in democracy in this state over and over again. So yes, the people agree with me. It's not surprising the legislature is completely out of step with them.
What would you be able to do, though, in terms of you would be up against a legislature which, if you were elected, could potentially pass a total abortion ban before you would even take office? What could you do?
Well, look, I think the power of the governor, and we don't see this because Mike DeWine is so weak, is a very powerful position. And the power that it has, particularly, is the work that it can do in the bully pulpit with the will of the people. So yeah, we'll take it to the ballot, and move right around the state legislature. They know it will pass. It's a 60+% pro-choice state just on the question of Roe. And it's common sense, right? I mean, this just makes a lot of sense. It's nothing extreme, and this is where the majority of Ohioans are. So, when you have a legislature that is illegitimate, that is unconstitutional, you as governor, have to work with the people. And that's really the job and the role. It's something I feel very comfortable with. It's what you do as mayor all the time. And, that will be the way that we get things through until we can have fair maps in this state.
On a ballot issue, you'd have to bring together people who support abortion access, but who have different lines of where that would be. Where's your line? What would you be championing?
Well, look, I just want to codify Roe. I want, to have the freedom that we had on June 23rd. Again.
Even though there were people and groups that were unhappy with that, what we had before Dobbs was decided.
But I've been very, clear about this. Like, Roe is the law of the land. We should make sure we should have Roe in the state, and Ohio women deserve that.
Another issue that you'd have to find some common ground on or work around here is gun legislation. You've been very open about some of the things that you'd like to see reversed in the legislature, which has been expanding access to gun rights and that sort of thing. How could you deliver on a promise to, say, roll back some things like the permitless concealed carry law or the law that would allow teachers to be armed in schools?
Yeah, so look, the first 2 years are going to be really tough. You have an illegitimate state legislature in unconstitutional districts, but the governor also gets to serve on the redistricting commission, and the redistricting commission will meet again. And frankly, we'll get fair maps if I'm elected governor. We won't get fair maps if Mike DeWine is elected. He's shown what he would do. He'll completely fold to the extremists and radicals, almost be called into contempt of court. Questionable if his son wasn't on the Supreme Court, he wouldn't have been called in, right? So we know what Mike DeWine's going to do. He's going to continue to eat at democracy on redistricting. We're not saying that, I don't pretend that, Karen, there's going to be a majority Democrat, but I do think we'll have fair maps where decisions are made in general elections rather than primary elections. I am known to work with Republicans. It's what mayors do. I wanted to work with the governor on gun safety until he completely folded with the extremists in his party. So the first 2 years, this isn't something we're going to get done. But we redraw, and we have legislatures that are legitimate, that speak with the will of the people. We will get this done. 9 out of 10 Ohioans believe that we should have universal background checks. That's an enormous number. This is a huge common sense answer. We're not talking about responsible gun owners here. We're talking about people that should never have them in their hands in the first place. And I want my freedom back to be able to go to grocery store, churches, to eat dinner without having to be worried about a mass shooting.
On the redistricting commission, you indeed would serve if you were elected, but you'd need at least one other Democrat from the Secretary of State or the auditor candidates to win to have a majority on that panel, or otherwise, wouldn't Republicans just continue to dominate the map drawing process because they're going to have to draw those maps again?
Yeah, but Karen, we know the party that wins the governor's seat typically wins one of the down ballots. So, most people don't know who the state treasurer is right now. You can name him. I'm sure even many folks on TV can't. And so whoever wins the governor's seat has a big opportunity to pick up another down ballot.
Let's talk about the economy here. You have said that you want Ohioans' pay to go up and their bills to go down. What does that mean exactly? Can you give me an example of something that you would do that would help Ohioans' pay to go up and their bills to go down?
Yeah, so I'm really excited about our One Good Job Pledge. We announced it last month, and it's really about making sure we grow jobs in the entire state, not just in the Columbus metro. What it's about is a $65 million investment in apprenticeship readiness programs, and then creating the pipeline that state construction jobs come with good union jobs that have a pension and benefits that really create the middle class. We think that this will create around 17,000 jobs in the first 4 years of my administration. We know, even before the bipartisan infrastructure bill passed, before the Intel announcement, according to the state of Ohio, there will be 22,000 openings. So we have got to do this work. If we don't, those jobs will be filled by people from out of state. So they'll come, take our money, and then go back and settle in some other place. We want to make sure that if you're working in Chillicothe, you live in Chillicothe, in that area, to really grow the economy. And this is a way that we can make sure that we're growing all across the state, good paying jobs that can provide for families, so we're not just sucking everybody into Columbus. That's what this One Good Job Pledge is about. I'm really excited. It's pretty common sense. It's not very complicated. It's a way that we can really invest in communities across the state. I also think we need to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. We know the cost of what people working 2 jobs, not being able to make ends meet, still having to go to the food bank to provide for their families. Look, it's un-Ohioan. If you work a job and you should get paid enough to be able to provide for your family, that's why we work. And we need to remember that, and I think the state government needs to put their money where their mouth is on that work.
You had talked about an inflation rebate between $350 and $700 for families that qualify. Is that still something that you're
Absolutely.
looking at?
Yeah, no, we talk about costs down. So, that's how to get pay up. To get costs down, states like Florida and Indiana have done this. So we're not talking like, blue states, for example. $350 rebate that's coming from the federal money. This money is coming anyway to the state. So we can give relief to working families right now that are feeling the pinch of inflation. Really stopping price gouging. Ohio is one of the few states in the country that it is still legal for corporations to gouge consumers without any repercussions. That's affecting us on prescription drugs, on utility costs, example after example. The governor could do that right now with an executive order, still won't do it. And then capping insulin rates at $30 a month. The state of Kentucky has capped insulin rates. Karen, if Kentucky can do it, Ohio certainly can.
You mentioned Intel, and that's, of course, potentially the largest development project in Ohio history. Governor Mike DeWine has been talking about it as a campaign selling point for him. While both Republicans and Democrats are trying to take some credit for that project, there are also some people who are concerned. And you mentioned the concern about how it is Central Ohio focused. There are people in Central Ohio who are worried about the environmental impacts, the cost of housing, that sort of thing. What would you do potentially to change or work on this Intel project if you were governor?
Look, I think everybody should be excited that this investment is coming. It is something that the state has spent $2 billion on. It's the biggest amount of money we've ever put into any investment. And we have very little details about the transparency of what we're getting in return. Again, as mayor, we did all kinds of these economic development opportunities, but we were transparent with the public about this is what the city is putting in, and in return, these are the jobs that you're going to get, and this is how much the jobs are going to pay. And that way, the community could decide, hey, is this a good deal for us or not? With Intel, we have very little, if any, details about what we're getting for our $2 billion. So that's a concern for me. I can't assess, and certainly, the media and voters can't assess if what we're getting is what we're putting in. So I think that would be a big difference, is just opening up the transparency on this deal, I think is really, really important. Secondly, look, I want to make sure that every job over there is good paying and good union paying, frankly, not just who builds it, but who cleans the bathrooms, who is in there. We want to make sure that those jobs are jobs that can provide for a family. Remember why we work. We work to provide for our families, and it's not about Intel's bottom line. It's about Ohio families' bottom line. And so we want to make sure that that happens. Finally, we have got to do something about our workforce. That's why the One Good Job Plan is so important. Look, I come from Dayton. Last month, the front page of the Dayton Daily News said, we can't find any workers in Dayton. Do you know why, Karen? They all moved to Columbus to go to Intel. And that's why the other regions have got to be players in this, because they don't want to lose even more population to the Columbus metro. That has been happening over the past 2 decades. So these are the pieces that are so important to make sure that we're really getting everything we deserve out of the Intel deal. The last thing I'll say about this is, Mike DeWine loves to go to the ribbon cutting, but he is always scant on details. Just ask the folks of Wood County that were excited that they had a Peloton manufacturing facility coming with a promise of 2,000 jobs. Mike DeWine was all there for the big ribbon cutting. When the jobs were announced they weren't coming, he's nowhere to be found. And we see that an awful lot across the state. Big announcements, no details. And as governor, you'll get the details from me.
A lot of your plan with regard to jobs addresses investment. You've got investment in free or discounted post-secondary education and universal pre-K and paid family leave in Appalachian, Ohio, and lower drug prices, infrastructure, technology corridors, companies that pay a fair wage, targeted commercial corridors in cities, towns, and villages, and clean and efficient energy. That's a lot of investment. Where is all that money going to come from?
Well, a lot of it will come from the federal government. We're seeing this bipartisan infrastructure plan that says, okay, here's where the focus should be, and really having a focused plan, like, for example, broadband in all of Southern Ohio, which I think is really, really important by 2028. A lot of these pieces that we can get done from the partnerships there. Some of it's from, like, the job pledge. We're talking about, coming from workforce development and job and family services to really direct that apprenticeship readiness money into this area. So we have some opportunities there. But the other point is, too, we recognize that right now, under this administration, they've had this idea that if they gave lobbyists and lawyers a tax cut, which they affectionately call the lobbyist loophole, the first $250,000 of your income tax, if you're a lobbyist or lawyer, you pay $0. I want lobbyists and lawyers to pay the same amount I pay and my family pays on income tax. Just their fair share, and I think that will help us fund a lot of these efforts too.
So you want to close that small business investment
It's
loophole.
unfair. It's unfair. I want lobbyists and lawyers to pay what I pay and what every other Ohioan pays. And just because you happen to do business with this building doesn't mean you should get a no pay for your income tax.
I think they've tried to close that, and that's been not done.
Well, I know you have the most corrupt state house in the country. Number one according to the FBI. So they want to take care of those lobbyists and their friends. I'm saying when we have a complete and total overhaul, we'll be able to do what's right for Ohio families.
I want to talk about that. You and other Democrats have talked about cleaning up corruption in state government using House Bill 6, the nuclear bailout law, as an example, the latest example.
Yes.
The issue of corruption in state government did not energize voters in 2020. In fact, Republican former Speaker Larry Householder was reelected that year.
Because he's an illegitimate district, again.
But then also when you look back on ECOT and even on the payday lending scandal, voters were not energized by that issue. How do you energize voters and get voters to care about this?
Look, I think there are some voters that are appalled by it, that they're paying every single month on their electric bill for a $1 billion bailout that doesn't make any sense, that has been ruled by, settled by the U.S. government as First Energy has settled, saying, yes, we did wrong. And
now, the nuclear part of that has been repealed, but there are other parts
still, every single month, you're still paying for a piece of House Bill 6. So I think there are voters that are appalled by that. But look, this is about bigger than whether voters care or not. We should care as people that care about governing. And frankly, we're not going to get to the issues that are really affecting working families, like I just talked about. Instead of taking care of lobbyists, actually taking care of working families, we have to clean it up. And that was why it was the first thing I announced when I was running for governor. This is what we would do. A really dramatic policy that no one else has ever given what they should do. I mean, Mike DeWine sat up here when this announced and did absolutely nothing when the FBI called the Ohio State House the most corrupt in the state. Said to you all that he was not state official 1 and Houston was not state official 2. They are. It has been proven that they are, and nobody's really answered for any of that. And so, look, I think that's a real problem for our democracy. Corruption anywhere, in any form, is a big problem for people not believing that people are looking out for them. And when you see it, you have to root it out because it's the way we keep the democracy intact. So that's why, I've called for putting together a public accountability commission so we can know what the Inspector General and what the Ohio Ethics Commission is doing, fully funding them. They've had a 25% increase in referrals, but they're still at the same funding level. And we're not talking about a lot of money here, just making sure that we have good watchdogs that are fully funded. Stopping the revolving door between corporations and government. You can work for one or the other, but not work for both. And then, we have to get the legislature to put full disclosure in where the money's coming from in politics. We do those 4 things. we can have a state house we can be proud of again. But right now, even if people are making a decision on their voting or not, they're not proud of these guys and what the work they're doing.
And speaking of fundraising, your fundraising is far behind DeWine's. You were in a contested primary, whereas DeWine didn't spend any money in his primary.
He spent a good amount. He just has a lot more money.
Yeah, well, he did have a lot more money, yes. So how do you get this message out when you are so far behind in fundraising?
Look, I mean, it's not surprising. He's the incumbent governor. I've already talked about this, money that he gets that isn't disclosed. We've seen it on TV already against us because he thinks that voters doesn't care about the fact that he has undisclosed donors. And we're spreading our message in a grassroots way. We're on TV. We think we have enough to be competitive, and we see a groundswell of support, particularly because he is so extreme and out of touch. And so that is an opportunity for us. I'd also point out, Karen, he got 48% of his primary vote. So the excitement around Mike DeWine is non-existent in this state. We are a different kind of campaign with a different kind of candidate, and we see that excitement in a way that I don't think I've ever really seen before, so it's a pretty exciting time.
DeWine is endorsed by Trump, but he has not campaigned with him. He did greet him when he came to the rally in Youngstown that he did last month. Are you seeking President Biden's endorsement? Would you want to be campaigning with him?
Look, if anybody wants to come to the state and talk about these issues that we're talking about, I'm going to campaign with them because this is what is at stake for working families and the future of Ohio. And so we would campaign with anybody that agrees with these issues, and we've said that before too.
So you're not running away from President Biden?
No, look, I mean, as long as we're talking about the issues I want to talk about, which is about abortion access, making sure we make our communities more safe, and that we actually grow real jobs, not just in the Columbus metro, I think those are the issues that we want to talk about.
And real briefly, you won't be doing any debates with Governor DeWine. Republicans have given a variety of reasons for that, but they will not be debating either in the Senate race or in this race, at least with the Ohio Debate Commission. So you're doing your own series of debates without your opponent.
Debates Ohio deserves, right?
How are these debates, though, if he's not there?
Look, I mean, we're going to be there, and the community's going to be there. The only person missing is Mike DeWine, and I've said over and over again, I'll meet him any place, anytime, because I want to talk about these issues and ideas. It's very clear that Mike DeWine's afraid to debate us because he doesn't want people thinking about the issues that he is so out of step with Ohioans on. He doesn't want to answer for the fact that he's state official one in the largest bribery scandal in Ohio history. He doesn't want to answer why he thinks it's okay a 10-year-old should carry a pregnancy to term. He doesn't want to answer the fact why he armed teachers with very little training. Over and over again, we see him with out-of-step ideas that he's not going to be able to answer. And that's why he's not debating, is he's thinking, well, if I just don't say anything, no one will know my position on those issues. It is a terrible move for the democracy. Anybody that decides not to debate and says that they care about the democracy is either a coward or a liar. And this is a key core of really showing two candidates that have very different views. He admits we don't have the same views on anything. So let us have the conversation and air it out. What does he really have to be afraid of? A man that's been in office for 46 years against, a two-term mayor. I mean, please.